enjoy the podcast too.
What is up, and welcome to Making the Grade, the weekly look at the Cardinals PFF grades from the most recent game. And today, yes, my friends, we get to talk about a win against the Dallas Cowboys. The Cardinals are 7-1 in the last 8 games against the Cowboys. There was a stat about that. I have always had 2 favorite football teams, the Arizona Cardinals and whoever was playing the Dallas Cowboys. So, this week, my favorite team was one and the same, right? So, I always love it when the Cardinals, thump the Dallas Cowboys. And in a year like this where, people say, the Cardinals tanking, and even those of us who don't think they're tanking intentionally, which I if you follow my content, I've been saying it's not what you think it is, right? Yeah, they're restructuring the roster. They're going to be stripped down in talent, but they're not like just going after that number 1 pick. They're trying to win games in a rebuild, right? And this team is, frisky and feisty, and it was really nice to see them win this game. And we're going to dive into the grades, talk about some of the things we're seeing, what we do every week. We look at what are the data telling us, right? I work with data. I work with research in what I do professionally. And one of the things I always say is that data or numbers tell a story, and it's really connecting the dots and seeing what those patterns are. And that's what we do here. So real quick, before we get into that, I'm going to say hey to some of the folks who dropped into the chat. We've got Don Hill who dropped in 6 p.m. Really? Yeah, sorry. I'll be busy eating dinner, but I will definitely tune in later. Phenomenal job coaching in this game. I completely agree. My big takeaway is there's a bright future with this front office. Go Cards. Could not agree more. Rumboy Bubble, what is up? I'll be listening. Thank you for hanging out. We got Coley Jack ready. I am ready to. Rafael Valencia, thank you for being here. Let you go. Bird Gang, stand up. We've got Marky with an X in there, maybe. Oh, W, right? Definitely got the W going on. Boston Fort, Bird Gang. Keith Davis, my favorite Cardinals analysis show. Let's go. Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate you. Longtime supporter of the channel. Brian Shea, my buddy. I hope you're feeling better, my friend. Thanks for being here. Joe. Mark Jackson, longtime supporter of the channel. What a win. Couldn't agree more. Love it, love it, love it. Great win. We got Arthur. Hello. Thank you for hanging out with us. Appreciate you being here. Omar Lopez. The one game I missed is the game we won. Maybe I shouldn't watch anymore. We'll keep winning. You're the lucky, whatever it is, the word I'm looking for, the lucky something or other. I don't have words today. Cruz Aspuro, but tanking, right? Yeah, this is a bad week for the tanking crowd, isn't it? Right? Dare to believe. I agree. Back to Constitution. 7-1 against them last night. Loved it, right? Thank you. Tanner Seymour, good to see DCR back in action. Thank you. Good to be back in action. JD Froten. It's great living in Dallas area where the Cards were the Cowboys. I lived in Dallas Fort Worth for 5 years when I was in grad school. So I lived in Louisville and then Fort Worth. So yeah. So I know that. I know that feeling. It's nice, right? Brian saying rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated. I'm on the men. Glad to know. Ron Boyd Bubble again popping into the live. My wife is watching her own show, so I got to escape. Nice. All right, so it's a win against the Cowboys. We all love it, right? It's a win. That's also nice, but it was an impressive win. I mean, if they had pulled off a win in the first 2 games, they would have been tight wins, which you'll take, right? But they took the lead and held on to the lead against the Dallas freaking Cowboys, who are supposed to be, right? They were at the top of a lot of power rankings. The Cardinals were at the bottom, right? So this was definitely a nice win to see, right? And the way they won, took command and held on to command and just did not let go, right? Kept that lead. And that's what you want to see. Real quick, JP saying Christmas came earlier this year. And then Keith Davis joining as a channel member. Thank you so much. Anyone else wants to join as a channel member, there's a link below. It's a great way to support the channel and what we do here. But thank you so much, Keith. I really appreciate that so much. So let's get into the grades. I'm going to start on the offensive side because we kind of have been looking at the offensive line a little bit and talking about that. So we're going to bring up the grades and look at the offense. I'm going to sort. Let's just start by scanning this, right? Tristan Colin, who came in, and we'll talk about that in a minute, to play left guard, had the highest grade on 14 snaps, 85.9. Looked really good in run blocking, solid pass blocking. Joshua Dobbs continues to impress, right? Solid grade. Hollywood Brown had a good grade. James Conner, another good grade for him. Froholt had probably his best day, especially in run blocking. His pass blocking was a little bit down, but his overall grade was good. Swain, the tight end, had a good game. Ingram, you see, a lot of folks in the middle here in the 60s and such. And down at the bottom, Paris Johnson Jr., we'll talk about him a little more. He had his worst game as a pro, I think, but he's a rookie, so that's going to happen. And then, McBride and Ertz both had a down game, right? The tight ends, okay? So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to sort it by run blocking. Actually, I'm going to run blocking snaps. And that way we get our offensive lineman up here at the top, right? So we can take a look at this. Real quick, though, back to Constitution with a super chat. Thank you so much. Glad Peyton and Vance are not our coaches. The trick plays, the intensity and the will to win as a team without our stars was sweet, right? Like, this is something people have been talking about. And everyone so wanted Sean Payton. I was in the camp that, I'd be fine. I mean, he's a good coach. I wouldn't mind it. But I wasn't as Sean Payton or bust as everyone else. And, did a live stream after they hired, Gannon, and a lot of people were like, hey, what's up? We don't have a coach with no head coaching experience. And I talked about that. Like, you get guys like who come in and do really well. Look at like Mike McDaniel in Miami, no head coaching experience. You'd take him, wouldn't you? Right. So the whole idea of having an experienced head coach, they just need NFL coaching experience as a coordinator. Like, the problem with Cliff isn't that he was inexperienced, it's that his experience was all college, right? And maybe part of the system. You want a coach who has NFL coaching experience as a coordinator at that level. But you don't need someone who's been a head coach before. And we see with Sean Payton, now maybe he'll turn it around there, right? In Denver, but it's not looking good right now. And, I think you take what we've got now. I think a lot of Cardinals fans right now are really glad we dodged that bullet. We got, the coaching staff we have that is building a culture, that is building something that I think is going to be sustainable. When think about this team, when Monty uses those draft picks that he's accumulating. Yeah, so 100%. Thank you for the super chat. Real quick, Saltiest Gaming, thanks for being here. Appreciate you, my friend. And Corey Cards, who's doing some cool stuff with a podcasting with a couple other guys, with Rashad and someone else. So they've got a podcast going on. Chris Smith, another channel, thanks for being here. And to think Peyton said he didn't want to come here because of what we had, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Okay, so getting back to the offensive line. This wasn't the best game for our offensive line, or at least in terms of grades. They did some nice things. The team overall did some nice things. But you look at the grades here. Paris Johnson Jr. had his worst game as a pro, right? He was equally kind of bad in run blocking and pass blocking. Okay. Will Hernandez had his probably worst game of the season, and he's been good, right? Was okay in the run blocking, not so good in the pass blocking. Froholt was good in the run blocking, bad in pass blocking. Humphreys, good in run blocking, not so great pass blocking. So you see a pattern here. And then there's a couple other that we have to go down a little bit. Wilkinson's played 47 snaps, actually had his best game so far this season. And that's a really, really low bar, right? His grades were in the 30s going into this. So he had his best game, but they took him out. Now, I don't know if there was an injury, if anyone saw that, or if he was just replaced because of performance. If you know anything about an injury for him, let me know. I didn't say anything about that, but they replaced him, with, we'll have to go down here for snaps a little bit, but Tristan Colon, who's a guy they claimed off waivers, I believe, going into the season, who was a solid player, who's a guy who could be a starter, maybe a low end starter, but a starter. And look, it was 14 snaps, a little bit low kind of small sample size, but like his grade, especially the run blocking, and his pass grade was solid, the best grade in the game, right? So Brian's saying they were alternating, so maybe they're going back and forth with them. Okay. So yeah, so like this offensive line performance was much better than the running game. Pass blocking game wasn't the best. Brian says it seemed like it was planned, the alternating between those two. So, either way, I guess you could say, whatever they did, even Wilkinson had his best game. So in fact, let's look at this. Wilkinson had 23 pass blocking snaps, 24 run blocking snaps. Colin had 9 and 5. So I was trying to see if there was something where they were, going with, he got more of the pass blocking, Tristan Colin did. So maybe they were leaning more that way. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see in this next game if they continue to do something like that, alternating, or if Colin gets the start, I would like to see him start. Clearly, he performed better. Clearly, Wilkinson has had a really rough season. So, looking at the offensive line, the story is, I mean, Froholt had a good game, his best game. Humphreys was better, okay, especially in the run blocking. They were better on the run blocking, but they weren't, they weren't out. They weren't setting the world on fire, right? So the offensive line was okay at points, had some issues, but it was certainly good enough, right? Real quick, Jason Crow, thanks for being here. Hey, what's up, Joe? Nice to see you. Great win by the Cardinals, 100%. Brian says maybe certain plays, not sure. Would nice to see Colin get more snaps for sure. I agree. Salty is saying, when was last time Cardinals had 220 yards rushing game? Yeah, I don't know. It's been a while, right? Omar saying, I will admit, after the first game, I thought Dobbs was complete trash. I'm glad he has improved throughout the weeks and changed my mind. Yeah, he had a rough game. The fumbles really in that first game were really if you took the fumbles away, which they happen, so you can't take away. But if you took them away, he was just kind of but not horrible, I think. As a backup stepping in, but also, like a lot of people have talked about, he had just kind of arrived, he hadn't been in the building a whole long time. It is nice to see what he's doing. He's looking like a solid backup. He's not, to me, he's still not a guy you want as long-term starter by any stretch of the imagination, but he has been a really nice backup who's graded well. That's what you want, right? A backup who comes in and can help you be competitive and maybe even win a game. So offensive line, the story is PJJ had a rough game. Hernandez, not his best. Froholt, Humphreys were okay. Wilkinson was better. And then Colin was really good. So it was serviceable, right? So we got that going on with the offensive line. Real quick, Jose, thanks for being here. Hey, Joe, did you cover Keitrell Clark and Zaven Collins? Appreciate things. Who's asking? Haven't got to that yet. We'll get to that. In fact, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about Keitrell Clark in particular when we get there. So, okay, so we've got that. That's what's going on there. Now let's I want to look at the tight ends. We talked about this briefly. Jeff Swaim, his snaps went, I don't have the exact numbers from the previous weeks, but at least comparing, he actually out-snapped Trey McBride, which is interesting. Probably game plan, I'm guessing. And then Zach Ertz, had the most snaps, but it was closer, right, between all three of these. And you have Jeff Swaim having the best grade, a lot of blocking snaps. In fact, only 5 pass play snaps, right? Most of it was blocking. So he seems to definitely be their blocking guy. Real quick, oh my goodness, it is raining. Cruz, thank you so much. Wow, very generous. $50 super chat. Wow. Thank you so much, Cruz. I appreciate your continued support. It bothers me that everyone is painting this as if the Cowboys threw it away or it was a trap game. This team has been competitive without high-level talent. I wasn't surprised by the when I was expecting it. Kyler on the team. We are 3-0. Go Cards. Right? Like, okay. Thank you for this, by the way, again. But yeah, I tweeted something out like how, I read an article on ESPN that talked about the game, and all it talked about is what the Cowboys did wrong. And it was all about the Cowboys and no discussion really of what the Cardinals did right. I'm seeing a few things on social media. There was a clip from, Pat McAfee giving the Cardinals some credit. And I saw something from Good Morning Football. I think whichever McCourty twin is there talking about the Cardinals. So a few people are giving them a little bit of love, but it's so much, right? About the Cowboys. And listen, I do understand like how national media works is it's all about ratings, and the Cowboys are a big deal ratings wise. So I get that that's why they cover that. But still, I mean, this is a big part of the reason why people are liking to go to smaller media sources and content creators like what I do. So listen, I'm glad to fill the void, to talk about the Cardinals with y'all. But yeah, so thank you, Cruz, again, for your generosity. And yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? So PFF is joking, right? Really? No, they're not joking. No, they're not. They're serious, whether you agree with it or not. But yeah, Cardinals should be 3-0 if they had Kyler. There's an argument for that, right? Carvers, thank you for being here. Nearly all national media is about Dallas. Oh, nothing. Yep, how we came, 100%. Robert, thanks for dropping in here. Good evening, gents. Was the only Brave soul to take the cards in my pick and pool. Ended up winning the pot. Yes, Gus gut meter was at peak this game, right? And yes, Salties, thank you so much. Hit the like button. Appreciate you throwing that out there. So the tight ends, we've been looking at this a little bit. We've been talking about how McBride has graded, been grading really well. We want to see more snaps. This was a down game. Ertz, his grades have been down. Let's even look at his grades this season. Like, his grades haven't been great. Against New York, it was okay, but his overall grade is 51.8 this year, right? So Ertz, they trust him. He's a veteran, and we've talked about this before. There are things veterans do that don't always show up on the stats and the grades, so sometimes they stick with him. But it's been a bit rough go for Ertz, and the snaps are getting a little closer. It feels like all of them are kind of in that 30s, right? Yeah, so McBride had a rough game. Pass blocking really brought him down, but everything was kind of low. So it was a little bit of a down game. Maybe part of that was the game, the matchup, right? Yeah, Ertz had a drop, right? Ertz making tough drops. If someone will trade for him, right? That's interesting, so yeah. Jason saying this team looks way more disciplined, a far from Cliff. I agree. The team, you love what you've seen from them. Micah Parsons said the Cowboys can't play down to our opponent, and that's what I feel like we did today. Great player, but the comments lack class. Yep, I couldn't agree more. Give your opponent some credit, right? Especially if they beat you, and don't. What you gonna do though, right? Colton Jack, Coley Jack saying, won my elimination challenge because everyone else chose Dallas. I went with the Finns. Nice. So yeah, Ertz has been struggling. There have been some drops and passes that were up high that he had to go for them, but they're passes that I think he even would say he normally should pull them in. So you just have to wonder if he's still not fully recovered from the injury, something. So yeah, I don't know. Let's look at the receivers, right? The receivers have been, no one's been individually tearing it up or, setting the world on fire. Receivers have been solid, had their moments. We look at Rondale Moore, had that huge run, his run grade 77.4, right? A nice touchdown. His receiving grade, passing grade, or passing play grade was not as great. Run blocking on 9 snaps was decent, but really, the way they're using him as a gadget player, I know we've talked about, Rondale Moore wanting to see him going deep more. They're using him as a gadget player, but at least they're using it in effective ways, I guess. So would like to see some more things from him, but certainly that run was really nice to see. Michael Wilson, grade of 65, 68.1 in pass blocking, 60.6 run blocking, 63 point in passing plays. That's a solid grade. He had a couple really nice plays. Obviously that one where the busted coverage, where they got him wide open. That was a huge play. Now, I know some people might look at his grade and wonder why it's not higher because of that huge play. You have to understand how PFF grader is probably looking at that play is it's a busted coverage. So it is, he did a good job running his route. He did his job, maybe a little bit of a plus, but it is not like he went up there and high pointed a pass against a couple defenders and did something extraordinary. He ran a route. Dallas blew the coverage. He was wide open and he caught the ball and had a nice little run after the catch. It was a good play, but a PFF grader probably isn't looking at that and just, giving it as a really high end grade play, probably a positive graded play, but not, the highest end grade. But still, he has been solid. I mean, this is for a rookie receiver in the 3rd round, right? This is great to see. We're seeing him starting, playing tons of snaps, right? Getting what you want to get out of a rookie receiver. And I think it's just going to get even better, right? Mazaki Felix, these grades do not reflect actual. Well, no, they do. They actually do. Maybe it's just, again, I'm not going to go into all of it. PFF, maybe someday I'll do a video talking about it more. You have to realize that PFF, it's not based on stats. It is every single play they grade. And if a player can have a huge box score on 4 plays, right? You get 4 or 5 really good plays. But if you're playing 40 snaps and you have 4 or 5 good plays and the rest of the snaps are mediocre or less, your grade could still be lower with an amazing box score. So you have to understand it's not a stat. It is not like the quarterback, rating where your yards and touchdowns are all just calculated in. Every play is graded. What did you do on this play? What did you do in this play? You got to understand it in its context. But anyway, I digress. Pascal, 14 snaps. They keep bringing him in. A lot of them were run blocking. He's kind of, I think he's, again, more of a culture, locker room kind of guy. Then we get down here. Hollywood Brown had a nice grade, 72.8, right? He had a really nice game. Not so great in the run blocking, but certainly the receiving, right? So looking at the receivers, there's some nice things we're seeing. They're not tearing it up as much as the running back, really, that we're going to talk about. James Conner has just been having an outstanding season. His grade was solid. 84 I mentioned on the pass blocking, overall 70.4, solid grade, great game by him. I think, some people ask why his grade isn't higher. I think there were some plays where that maybe the blocking kind of got him a lot of it, and then others that he made up for it, where he made something out of it. But a 66.2 is a good grade. Zaki is saying, I need to clarify, when you watched the game and saw the physicality of the offensive line instead of grades. Okay. I mean, grades are a data point, and they reflect certain things and not everything. So they're going to reflect how well they did things at an aggregate, but it may not reflect effort and energy. So yeah, there's something. No data point captures everything, right? This data point captures a lot. I think it's a pretty good one, but it doesn't capture everything. Jose is saying, blocking receivers willing to contribute when needed, check. Discipline to team play effort, check. Larry Fitzgerald, is that you, right? Yeah, I mean, listen, Michael Wilson isn't Larry Fitzgerald, and there's only one Larry Fitzgerald, but he's doing the kinds of things you want to see out of a pro, right? He's giving us the kinds of things you want to see, right? So that's awesome thing to see. Oh, Thunder, thanks for being here. Wilson had some great blocks too. Yep. And then Agent 47, I hope Wilson will be a true wide receiver 1, because I'm afraid that we'll not be able to draft. I mean, listen, that's a very real possibility, right? We're people saying, oh no, we're, the people who were the Caleb Williams folks are like, oh no, we're going to not be able, we're going to lose the first overall pick and miss out on drafting him if we don't, stop being competitive and winning. And now it's like, man, if we see this team continue to be competitive, are we going to miss out on Marvin Harrison Jr.? But listen, my position is, I want to see this team win. I would rather see this team fight, win, and maybe win 7 games and not have the draft picks you would have hoped for, but show that this team is disciplined. They've got the culture and the system, and give them something to build into next year. And I trust Monty to use those draft picks, because they're going to have a lot of draft picks, even if they don't get the top 2 or even if they're, the 2 picks they have in the first round aren't in the top 5 or whatever. If they're picking 7 and 14 or 7 and 9 or whatever in terms of the draft order, and we miss out on that elite player, yeah, okay, you would like to have Marvin Harrison Jr., no doubt. But this team is building something. Monty has 6 picks in the top 75, something like that. Tons of good draft capital. He's going to build something good. I'm excited. Give us the wins. I'll take it. Cruz saying Texas will get us Marvin. Here's hoping, right? But both, Texans, Cardinals, both looking better than expected. So yeah, absolutely love what we're seeing out of Michael Wilson. Maybe the stats aren't through the roof. He had a nice game this game on one really big play, really got his yards up. But seeing him on the field, seeing him blocking, seeing him make nice catches as the offense develops, and as he develops, he'll be a bigger part of it. Love what we're seeing. But yeah, so James Conner, great game. Ingram graded nicely. He did, the yards weren't there. He had one really bad run, I think, but he got swallowed in the backfield, and that I think was more blocking. So I think Ingram's grade being decent, 64.4 run grade, 67.2 overall grade, that demonstrates how PFF takes everything, a lot of things into account. And that there was that one really bad run where he got stuffed, but the defenders were there on him, right? So he couldn't get anything out of it. So that wasn't really on him. DeMarcado had just a handful of snaps, 9 snaps in the passing game. And so, he didn't grade particularly well, but he wasn't super big part of what they were doing, at least in the running game, right? A little more blocking and things like that. Lucetta, fullback, had some nice grade for pass blocking, 73.4, right? So we got the offensive linemen, we've got the running backs and receivers. And then obviously Joshua Dobbs, 78.4 overall, 67.1 passing, 90.4 running, continues to do a nice job running the ball, and continues to just be, again, a solid backup who's stepping in there in the place of Kyler while he's injured. So really nice to see. C level, Wilson was picked 96, trust the process, right? 100%, right? Tristan Cullen was off waivers and looks pretty good, 100%. So there's a lot of nice things we're seeing on the offensive side, right? So those are the offensive grades. Now let's switch over and talk about the defensive grades. Okay. So the defensive grades were also pretty good. But there were more low points, I would say, on the defensive grades. So let's start right here talking about the linebackers, Chris Barnes and Kaiser White. And I want to give a shout out, Jace in the Discord. And by the way, if you aren't in the Discord, there's a link in the description of the video. Join the Discord. We have continual Cardinals conversation there all day and just a lot of fun conversation. It's a great community. There's folks in the chat here, a part of the Discord. And Jace, and if you're here, Jace, throw a comment out there. I don't know if he's here or not, but Jace sent me a message and pointed out that if you go and look at the linebackers, so these are the linebacker grades, and you filter it so that minimum snaps are 50 they take the maximum snaps that a player has, which is 227. It's the most snaps that a linebacker has. And if you filter it so it only shows players that have at least half of that, what that really does for you is it gets really the starter, right? So like if you take this out, no minimum snaps, you literally got a linebacker with 3 snaps, right? Who graded really well. So you want to filter that to take out the low sample size. So going 50%, right? Players who are starting sorts of snaps, right? And if you look at that, lo and behold, the Cardinals linebackers are ranked 5 and 8. Both of our 2 starting linebackers are in the top 8, right? Chris Barnes, 79.3, Kaiser White, 77.2. And Jace, again, shout out to you, Jace. Thanks for sharing this info with me. Pointed out that those 2 linebackers combined, he said, making like $6 million this year combined, right? Yeah, Monty killing this draft, and I'd say JG and Rallis, particularly on defense, I think are killing it with coaching up the limited personnel we have. So thank you, Jace, for pointing that out. So going back to the defensive side, the linebackers, like the 2 best grades on the defensive side of the ball are inside linebackers. And I'll tell you, I liked the Kaiser White signing. I thought that was nice, getting an inside linebacker from the defensive system they're bringing in, right? That linebacker is that Mike linebacker. The inside linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. So if you're bringing in a guy who is from the system, Philadelphia, that pays huge dividends in terms of helping install the system, right? So that was a great signing just from a process perspective, and it's turned out, right? And then Chris Barnes, though, I was a little worried about the other inside linebacker because, moving Zave into edge. And I'll be honest, I'm still a little, the coaches know what they're doing. So I guess I want to trust them. And I get that in terms of what they want to do in this defense, he's probably a better fit on the edge size wise, but I was worried about that other inside linebacker, and Barnes has looked good, and now, the other linebacker got injured. Josh Woods, like Austin saying, do you think they'll insert Josh Woods back in the starting lineup when he gets healthy? Right. That's the guy who's out with injury. And this is tough because it's like, Barnes is playing really well. So I would say we should keep Barnes in the starting lineup. Woods didn't play well before he went out with the injury, but at the same time, you wonder, was he not playing well because he was injured? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think my thought is if Barnes continues to play like he's playing, you'd think they keep him in there. How have you felt about Zaven this season? Well, and Salty is saying he was invisible on Sunday. Zaven has made some nice plays, but he's having a hard time adjusting to all that comes with being an edge rusher. And we'll point out here, I mean, Zaven Collins, his grades, weren't great. 51.7, 59.9, tackling grade, 27.6, or sorry, 27.6 is the tackling grade, 59.9 is the run blocking grade, pass rush grade, 60.1. And he had a rough day in coverage too. Coverage grade is 44.8 for Zaven. The days the game in which he had a reasonable grade, I think it was his coverage grade that kind of brought it up. In fact, let's look at this real quick. His best grade was against the Giants, and his coverage grade was better there. Against Washington, his coverage grade was good. But look at his pass rush grade, like all three of these games, right? 52.1, 59.7, 60.3. We've been talking about this in here. Switching him to edge, he has not been an edge rusher throughout his career. He has rushed the passer some. Inside linebackers do that sometimes on blitzes, but he has not been an edge rusher. And moving to the edge, what you're getting with him is a guy who is an edge rusher who you can move out into coverage, right? Which you do sometimes. He's an edge rusher who can help with the run. And he's a guy who's going to get you effort sacks here and there, and effort plays, but he's not a guy who's just going to be an intuitive edge rusher, pass rusher. And it's showing here. And so, I like Zaven Collins. I like him more as an inside linebacker. So even though, listen, I trust what the coaching staff is doing overall, and I don't want to question their decision-making. I hate to say this because I don't want to overreact, but what I wonder is if he's not the kind of Mike linebacker they want in this defense, is his long-term future not going to be with this team? And I hate to say it because I love him as a player. I love him as an inside linebacker. I like his character. I like what he does. But if they're going to play him at edge, I mean, maybe with time he'll develop those pass rush moves and be what they need. But I'm a little worried about it. And I hate to throw that out there because I love Zaven Collins. But yeah, maybe I am overreacting. I hope I am. I really do. Right. So we'll see. I mean, he's made some plays, but maybe he just needs time, and then he'll be a really good edge rusher, and then we'll all kind of breathe a sigh of relief, right? I'm a little worried though. And he got poked in the eye too, right? Salty is saying I doubt they pick up his option. That's also, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. That doesn't necessarily mean a guy's leaving for sure. Sometimes they just don't want to. That option is pretty big. Sometimes they want to give him, sign him to a contract that's smaller than that. We'll see, right? Real quick, Kyle, thanks for being here. Appreciate you, my friend. Long time no see. Colin played great. His limited stats. Love to see him get the start to go cars, no doubt. Appreciate you. Follow you, someone I know. We follow each other on Twitter. A long time supporter of the channel. So thank you for being here. Classy Nasty, how's Zaven's eye? Sounds like there was an interview or JG and said that it's doing okay. So good to, hopefully it'll be okay. Jackie, what is up? Howdy, Joe. Looking forward to tomorrow night. 100%. Jackie's going to be with us. And also, Walter Mitchell has agreed to jump on for TCR Live tomorrow night. So got a couple great folks hanging out with us tomorrow night. So Marco Wilson had so much better game than last week, 100%. So yeah, like Zaven, I love Zaven. I do. I hope he takes to the edge rush position a little better. He's made some nice plays. He's going to make plays on effort and everything he does. But could they end up bulking him up, making him a defensive end? They could. I hope they don't. I think that he's decent speed for his size. I do think edge is a better than and defensive end. It depends, in a 4-3, that's kind of more of an edge rusher. But with what they do, I think, he's more that linebacker edge. We'll see. So, okay. Inside linebackers, though, like what we're seeing, pleasantly surprised at how good, I thought Kaiser White would be good, but how the good play we're getting from Chris Barnes is nice to see. Jalen Thompson continues to play well as that slot cornerback. So that is nice to see. Marco Wilson had his I think this is his best game of the season. Let's take a look at probably by far. Well, actually, the first game was not too bad, but really it's the Giants game where he really, really struggled. So it is nice to see him rebound from that. We'll see what happens moving forward. The tackling grade was a little bit down, but the coverage grade was his best of the season, 74.2. So that is nice to see. Now looking at let's look at the edge rushers, okay, and the defensive. Let's start. We got defensive line and edge rusher. Let's go with pass rush snaps here. Let's start with the edge rushers. Dimikaji continues to be a revelation, right? Just how much he's improved and developed, and that guy who like you wonder, well, with Ojulari and Myjai Sanders and Cameron Thomas, was Dimikaji going to be an odd man out like Dennis Gardeck? Nope. These two, him and Gardeck, have been really good. You see a 66.0 pass rushing grade, 69.6 for Gardeck. Solid grades for both these guys. Dimikaji's getting some sacks. They're both, they both have, I think, 2.5 sacks each, I think. So you love what you're seeing out of them. Yes, Collins has struggled. Ojulari had a decent pass rushing grade, so that's nice to see. So I think Ojulari is going to come along. Luketa is, again, more of a run stopper. He had a rough game. Not a great game for Luketa, overall. But you're seeing you love the consistency out of Dimikaji and Gardeck. You just love seeing that, right? So, if those two can hold it down and keep this competitive, and then Ojulari starts getting up to speed, there could be a nice rotation here. In terms of now more the defensive line, the interior lineman, right? Ben Stiller had a okay game at points. The grade's not great, but his tackling grade's okay. So, so. Dante Stills really struggled. He had a really rough game, 37.8. The rookie, so you want to see better out of him. Fotu, his grades 55 isn't great, but listen, I'm telling you, Fotu's having his best season as a pro. Maybe that's a low bar, but you look at it his grades. Now he did miss a game, right? But his grades here, 61, 55. But look at what he did before this. Rookie season, 41, 37.1, 32.4, right? This is his best season as a pro. It's not a great grade, but he's been serviceable as that big nose tackle. And in this defense that they brought from Philadelphia, they want that big nose tackle. And he is the only guy they have in the roster coming in that fits that physically. I mean, he's 6'5", 334. You can't coach that up, right? That is massive. So they're trying to get him in as that nose tackle. It's been serviceable. That's been nice to see in terms of that. Then we got Kevin Strong, didn't grade particularly well. Cameron Thomas, he's been solid this year, right? And Ledbetter had a reasonable grade. I think these, let's look at them, kind of highlight them. Jonathan Ledbetter is, he had a rough game against the Giants. A lot of our defenders did, but Washington, it was solid, right? So his grade he's been, for a guy who was sort of a marginal roster guy who's now getting more snaps, he's been pretty decent, right? You look at his career, he had only 51 snaps his first year, good grade there, but his, last year with Arizona had 275 snaps, 43.4, not so good. This year, it's looking a lot better. He's not a guy necessarily you want to be a long-term starter, but he's getting the job done for them. Cameron Thomas, look how steady he's been. I mean, the tackling grade was a little off this game, but 63.7, 65.2, 67.6. Pass rushing grades, look how consistent that's been. So, this is a guy that is, the sacks aren't really there, but I think if he keeps playing like he's playing, some nice things are going to happen. Certainly he had that big defensive play, I think the touchdown. But Cameron Thomas as an interior defensive lineman has been solid, right? Fotu sucks. Yeah, listen, he's not great, but he's been serviceable-ish. Again, they want someone with that size profile, and those guys are hard to find, especially ones that are good. So I get why they kept him, because they weren't going to find someone better right now who is that big. They're not usually available. Overall defensive line, the grades are hit or miss, right? Dimikaji and Gardeck are the consistent ones. And let's look at them, Dimikaji. Look at that, right? 76.6, 84.8, 69.2. This is his worst game, and it's still solid, right? And his overall grade is 81.0 for this season. That is really good. Gardeck, right? 91.2, 71.5, 71. So he had a really great first game and then saw these games. Overall grade is 87.1. So you love what you're seeing out of them. So again, this is the story of the Cardinals this year, though, right? The personnel is somewhat limited, but the coaching staff is putting in the right spots, coaching them up. They're playing hard. They're doing something right in terms of schemes, with the exception of the second half of the Giants game. But they're getting the most out of some limited personnel, and it's really nice to see. Agent 47 was off in tackling this week. Yeah, tackling was a little bit off, right? Hope this doesn't repeat. But those tackling grades, there's a lot of red. So you look at that's not good. But they still kept them to 16 points. Great coaching on the defensive side, right? Now let's look at coverage, because I want to talk about the cornerbacks. Jalen Thompson, awesome. Kayvon Wallace, grade wasn't great. Tackling brought that down, but he's again another guy they claimed off waivers, so we're getting something out of him that's decent. Andre Chacheri, I'm not even sure how to pronounce that. Chacher. He surprised me. I mean, this is a guy who is, look at his, he's been a practice squad marginal kind of a guy, with Philadelphia some, I guess, and 30 grades in the 30s, he's great in the 70s now. So you like to see, guys like that working in the system. So, but Marco Wilson, best game of the year. That was nice to see. Keitrell Clark had a rough game. Okay. His grade was not great, 39.3. His coverage is 40.2. And I brought him up here because I want to look at him because, it was rough. If you look over, though, and you look over here in coverage, he was targeted 12 times, gave up 9 receptions for 114 yards, no touchdowns. Okay. But I don't know if you watched, he was drawing CeeDee Lamb. I know I saw at least a couple plays where he was drawing CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know how consistently he was. If someone caught that, let me know. But let's remember, this is a good Dallas. This Dallas offense has some nice players, especially on the receiving side of things. So, the grades are going to be a little bit rough there, but a 6th-round rookie playing against CeeDee Lamb, didn't give up a touchdown. We'll live with that with a win, obviously, right? So we're seeing the cornerbacks. Wilson had a good game. Clark struggled a bit. Thompson continued to be good. Safeties, Wallace was okay. Again, it worked, right? Chacheri was okay, right? Decent. So, not too bad there. Hamilton, they just continued using him for a snap here or there. So I'm not sure. He was really good from the last couple of years. So I'm not sure we're seeing more from him, but that's what we're seeing, right? So overall, though, the defense, struggled a little bit here and there, especially with tackling, I would say, but certainly it was good enough to keep the Dallas Cowboys to 16 points, right? So real quick, couple of comments I want to get to. Clark played better than his grade, in my opinion. Okay. And listen, part of it might be the matchup he drew, right? So I love Clark, though, by the way. Dana saying Clark was struggling more when he was on Gallup than against Lamb. I thought interesting. And sometimes that's how the matchups go. Sometimes a cornerback is better equipped to deal with a shiftier receiver, or sometimes they're better equipped to deal with a long stride speed receiver, and they'll struggle. I just remember, for example, everyone's favorite Patrick Peterson always struggled with the receiver in Seattle, the small one. I forget his name, but the more the slot receiver. Anyway, who was just shiftier, right? So yeah. So that's how it goes sometimes. So Agent 47, I still believe that Garrett Williams will be better cornerback this team by the end of the year. I love the potential. I wonder how that recovery's going and how long it's going to take, but I certainly like him as part of the future. Lockett, that's it. Lockett. That's the guy. It wasn't Baldwin. Thank you for asking. It wasn't Tate, but it was Lockett. Lockett is the guy that in games where there were a couple of games he just really tore us up, and I feel like Patrick Peterson had a hard time against Lockett, but not as hard against Metcalf, right? Sometimes it's just a play style matchup. So overall, there's so many nice things to see about this team. The grades were generally pretty good. Let's real quick look at Dallas. Look at, what happened with their grades. On offense, Tyler Smith, left guard, good grade. Their Lipke, has him as a halfback. He was kind of a fullback coming out of college, graded well. They had some nice grades up here, but like their offensive grades were, they struggled. And that CeeDee Lamb had a 59.1 grade, right? Brandon Cooks. So overall they struggled. Gallup had a decent grade on offense. And that's what happens when you put up 16 points, right? Defense. On defense, DeMarcus Lawrence was a beast. He had a great grade. And then you have some reasonable grades here, but they really struggled here. Leighton Vander Esch, right? Jonathan Hankins, Mazzie Smith, the rookie, Dante Fowler, like some really not so great grades for these players. So, they were without some starters. A lot of people are pointing that out. So were the Cardinals. They were, you remember they were without this guy who was the first overall pick quarterback, but what do we know? So overall, that's kind of what we got going here. Let's look at one last thing about the grades before we kind of have maybe a few Q&A and then get out of here. Here's just the overall kind of PFF's like grades of their personnel, like who they say they are the starters of positions based on snaps they've played. So here is the defense in the base personnel, like it's really more of a 3-4. You've got the inside linebackers talking about looking good, Dimakaji, the cornerbacks, right? So this is kind of just a general how it's shaping up. Let's put this in the nickel. And then you see they swap out some players. You got Gardeck in there, then Thompson at the slot. Some nice grades we're seeing at points, a little bit tough at some points, right? Then the offense, this is they've got this listed as the base or the 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. Dobbs grading well, Connor looking really. Offensive line's a little, up and down. Receivers, solid, the outside receivers, reasonable grades. Ertz struggling a little bit more, grade isn't great there. And then we're going to move this into the 12 personnel, the 2 tight ends. And you got McBride in there, whose grade is still pretty good, even though he had a rough game, right? So yeah, there's some ups and downs, but there's some nice, you want to see more green on there, right? And we're seeing some nice green on there. So that's kind of what we're gonna do for the grades. We'll get there's a few comments and questions I want to get to, and then maybe we'll kind of get out of here. Salty has a good question. Who will be the best draft pick out of this year's outside of Paris Johnson Jr.? So tell me who you think in the chat. Right. Because I think right now there's, in terms of who has been best, you got to look. I mean, Paris Johnson Jr. obviously is the guy who's starting. He's going to be the best. Wilson, I think, is the guy that has looked the best. But he also, has, when you're a receiver, you can pick your spots to flash, if that makes sense, because you're not targeted all the time. If you're a cornerback, you've got, so I have a little bit of sympathy for Keitrell Clark. He's having to play and get targeted a lot. People are picking on him. He's a 6th round rookie. So he's drawn some tough matchups, but Wilson, it has looked good. His grades have been really good. In the end, who's going to be the best? I think, because I think you could make an argument that 3 years from now, the best rookie not named Paris Johnson Jr. might be someone who right now isn't on the field, like Garrett Williams, or it could be someone who's on the field but hasn't made his impact yet, which is BJ Ojulari, right? So those are also players that are possibilities. But if I had to go right now, I think, certainly Michael Wilson is really a good candidate for that. So, and I'm seeing Michael Wilson is put a lot of people saying that, right? So yeah, a couple things. Agent 47, I really don't understand this PFF grades. And then Dana Robinson, yeah. This round PFF grades seem a bit off to me from what I remember watching in person, but I also wasn't watching all 22 one player at a time. Yeah. At some point, maybe I'll do a video that I just deep dive into kind of how PFF stuff works, at least the best of my knowledge. I don't know everything about it. I think I've mentioned before, one season before I started this channel, I worked part-time doing like a very low level part of their process. So I got to see a little bit of how it works. And like they hire people all the time every year. and just to work part-time remotely doing stuff. And so I saw a little bit of how it works and understand a little bit, but like the actual grading process, I never got anywhere near doing any of that. So, but there is some stuff out there that talks about how it works out on the internet. And so maybe at some point I'll do a video talking about that a little bit more specifically. Saltiest Gamer, Keetrell Clark. Listen, I love Clark, so I think he's going to be a nice part of this team long run for sure. Robert Moore saying, question, can you come up with a chart showing how long it takes to properly develop position on offense and defense? That's a good question. That would be interesting. I'd probably have to take some time looking at some career arcs of players, but maybe that might be something to do maybe in the off season. We've got a little bit of time, so that'd be interesting. You should try to get Trevor Sikkema on to explain the grades. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. That he's a busy man now though, but maybe, reach out to him. Right. Guy who knows how they do this, actually, who I have had on here before, is no longer with them with PFF. He's with Sumer Sports, is Eric Eager. Actually, he was a super great dude, and he was on this live stream one time. Might speak with him at some point if he's available again. But although he doesn't work for PFF anymore, so I don't know how much he'd want to talk about that. Check out his Sumer Sports stuff, though. They're doing some good stuff. Agent 47, when K1 back, is a good deal to trade Dobbs to Jets. I saw someone tweeting about that. I don't know. I don't know that the Jets, I don't know if they're going to really want to, like, I think if the Jets are going after a quarterback, it's going to be someone who is a starter with experience, and they seem to not be interested in doing that right now. I mean, I don't think that I don't even know that they'd be interested, to be honest. I think if they're going for someone, they want someone who is probably more of a veteran high-end, or well, there's no high-end starters available now, but someone who has been a starter in the past. I don't know, though. I think they're going to keep Dobbs. I think they like him, what he brings as a backup, but yeah, we'll see though, right? Wilson, yeah, I saw that too. Wilson has more receiving yards than Hopkins, right? Zach Felix like Garrett Williams. Yeah, I think he could be, right? Sorry, my narrative, Jets are tanking, right? Yeah. Kevin Cole isn't with PF anymore, so he might be a good option. Yeah. I just want, okay. It's a little tricky with that because one of the things I can tell you is because their grading system is a proprietary system, like they want to protect how they do that. It's a industry sort of secret sort of thing. And I get that, right? You don't want that getting out there so someone else tries or whatever. So people who work with PFF have to actually sign sort of non-disclosure. I actually had to sign something to do what very low level thing I did, that I'm not going to, publish any of the materials, training materials, or describe in detail how they do things behind the scene, beyond what's kind of available out there. So even when I talk about how PFF stuff works, and again, I don't know a lot about it. I definitely do not ever, when I say I worked for PFF part-time, it was at a super low level. Definitely not trying to make myself sound any more important than I am. But even like when I talk about PFF, I try to talk about the stuff that is out there that is already kind of known about how they do things, but just explain it, because like the stuff that they have in-house, you sign something that says you're not going to share that. So Class and Nasty, thank you so much. Good stream, Professor. Thanks for the stats. Appreciate that. You have to keep Dobbs. Kyler injuries are still concerning. I think that's another thing to keep in mind, right? So yeah, Bears are so bad, so much for high in town, right? Ilona, thank you for being here. How are you? I'm doing well. Thank you so much. A very kind person, Seahawks fan, who always drops in here and is always super kind. So yeah. So those are the grades that were for the Dallas Cowboys game. Man, it's a nice win. Do we have to recalibrate our expectations for this team? I mean, listen, I know the talent is still, they're working with guys who probably should be backups, but man, this coaching staff is coaching them up. I mean, people were talking 2 or 3 wins, 4 wins. Do we think this team's going to win more than that? I mean, they've been competitive in all 3 games, and they just beat the Cowboys, and Kyler's coming back later in the season. This defense is playing hard. They're playing above their talent level, their personnel level. Tell me in the chat what's your prediction for how many wins the Cardinals have now with what we've seen so far, and anticipating that like the whole Kyler's going to sit the whole season. The only way that's happening is if he has a setback, right? Injury wise. If he doesn't play this season, it's because he can't play, right? But if he can play, which I think he will, he's going to play. Like all those narratives. And listen, I'm going to toot my own horn. I've always been like all those Kyler's not going to play stuff. I've always shot that down. The tanking narratives that the tank is in, I've shot that down. I don't believe any of that. I do believe that they've built a roster that isn't positioned to be competitive. So if you want to call from a roster building perspective, doing the first year of a rebuild, if you want to call that tanking, then call it. But no one in this organization is trying to lose games week in and week out. And I've always been consistent in that. And I feel like they're proving that faith to be warranted, right? So here's what we're seeing in the chat. Got 7 wins, right? Okay. I'm still at 6 wins. Okay. I'm predicting 7 wins during the offseason, and I'm sticking with it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Dan is saying if we keep it close like this all season, I would say floor is 5 and ceiling is 8. Okay. Yeah. I say 6 wins in off season, add 1 more. Okay. Cardinals can beat anyone. We haven't been blown out. The Niners game will be the biggest test, though. Yeah. They've been trying to win since week 1, so I know they don't want to quit. Maybe 6-7 wins optimistically. Yeah. I think for me, I think the 6 to 7 win mark is probably where I'm comfortable. I think there's an upside higher than that. Like Dan is saying, ceiling is 8. Yeah. I mean, listen, just think about it though. Like, would it be that out of the realm of possibility if this team continues to be competitive, the defense is coached up really well, and Kyler comes back, and this offense that has, with James Conner being a beast and Joshua Dobbs getting it done, has been competitive and just beat the Cowboys. What if Kyler comes back in week 6 or 7, right? Or even 8? What if they get 7? What if they get 8 or 9 games with Kyler, and they've won a couple of 2 to 3 before that, even 2, right? What if Kyler comes back, we get 8 games with Kyler, and they've won 2 games? Is it that unbelievable that Kyler Murray and this coaching staff and what we're seeing could somehow rip out 5 wins out of 8 games? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean, it's not that crazy to imagine that happening, right? I still think 6 to 7 games is where I'm comfortable with, but I think there's a higher ceiling than people want to acknowledge. A lot of things have to go right? But yeah, Salty is saying 6 wins, right? Mizaki Felix less than 5 wins, could be, right? Yeah, if we beat the Niners, we'll be a playoff hunt, right? Thunder. Okay, so Thunder's feeling we could win 9. We beat Dallas and didn't look like a fluke, right? Listen, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Just saying, not as crazy as it sounds, right? First 4 weeks, I say 2-2, still possible. Recalibrating after week 5, Kyler Murray practice and then game time in due time. He'll Warrior heal thyself first, right? Robert Moore saying if Cardinals can at least make it a close game or even beat them in their house, huge statement. Media might blow a fuse. Cough, Florio, right? And that's the Niners, yeah. Texans beat Jags, Colts beat Ravens. There's a lot of parity, 100%. If you don't understand that, watch some more football, because you just never know, right? I get it. A team with a roster like the Cardinals, it's a safer bet to predict that they're not going to win games. And I get it, but the potential is there for things to surprise you, right? And again, I don't think this is a playoff team by any stretch. I think that the roster limitations are going to kind of start to, especially if more players start to get injured. I think that's also going to kind of, in Austin say we have to stay healthy. I think it's gonna at some point kind of catch up with us a little bit. But listen, this is year 1 of a rebuild. We've been saying it. They're competitive. This is what we want to see. They're fighting. They're in every game. They just upset a team that people had at number 1 in the power rankings. Even if this team only wins 5, 6, or 7 games, if they're in most of the games like they have been, and they throw a few upsets in there, and then you go into next year and you've got all that draft capital, all that cap space, these rookies with a full season under their belt, Keitrell Clark, Michael Wilson, Paris Johnson Jr., Garrett Williams healthy, right? All these things coming to be, and you've got this coaching and this culture that seems to be working. Next year, they're going to be competitive and potentially, I could see them being a playoff team next year. Early in this offseason, before we saw the product on the field, the conversation was year 3, right? Year 1, rebuild, give them plenty of grace. They're going to lose a lot of games. Year 2, you want to be frisky and competitive, maybe sniff the playoff hunt, but maybe not make it. Year 3, you want to see them in the playoffs. I don't know. Are they a year ahead? Is this year they're going to be frisky and competitive, but not make the playoffs? And next year is playoff? I don't know. Here's hoping. If nothing else, love what we're seeing in the culture and everything, right? So again, it's already coach of the year for me, right? So listen, a lot of nice things we're seeing. So we're going to talk about this more, though. Real quick, I'll take this last question. Where do you think they need the most help? Defensive line? I do think so. If you assume that Clark is going to get better and Williams is a guy who's going to, at the cornerback position, be good for them, I think defensive line is where they need the most help. Mm-hmm. Interior defensive line. Definitely. So, all right. Well, we're going to get out of here. Thank you all. So many great comments and questions. Great crowd. The generous super chats. Thank you so much. And we've got a new channel member, Keith Davis. Thank you for that. We'll get you on the shout outs. So I'm going to put up the membership shout outs. There'll be, Keith, I'll get you on there for next time. And we're going to get out of here. And then tomorrow night, TCR Live, Jackie and Walter Mitchell are going to be joining me. So please be sure to come hang out with us. It's a great time to talk Cardinals football after win. We'll see you later. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's Joe Mo. He's the host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.